A few months ago, I asked Black women living all over the world to share which countries they thought were best for Black women expats. I got a lot of responses, which I turned into, I was expecting one video, but it ended up being two videos called Best Countries for Black Women. I've linked both of those in the description of this video. Danielle relocated to France with her two teenagers and thought that France should be included in the list of best countries for Black women, but we couldn't get our schedules to coordinate, so I never got to interview her for that video. But we did get a chance to chat in my Facebook group for Black female solo travelers. So I thought I would share that interview with y'all here today. But first things first, if you're new here, welcome. I'm Adelia. Everybody knows me as Picky Girl Travels the World. I help Black women master their money so they can live life on their terms. My clients are women who are moving abroad, who are traveling long term, and some who are working toward financial independence. As you can see around here, we're all about that space where travel and money intersect. And if those are topics you're interested in, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll know the next time I upload a new video. Please do. Please Perfect. Open a bottle of wine.
Perfect.
It's late Friday for you, right?
It's 11-ish.
Okay, so yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Not that I ever let the time affect when I drink.
Exactly. No, right. Especially over here. I'm like, all day is rosé day.
Yeah. No, yesterday, a friend in the middle of the afternoon sent me a text and was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Drinking some whiskey." And I can't go back to a world where casual day drinking is frowned upon.
Absolutely. Because right now, I feel like whatever you need to do to get through this, we have dealt with this for the last year or more now.
Yeah, more now.
So, you know what? Nobody should judge anybody on what they do, especially in their own home these days.
Amen to that, sister. Amen.
Nobody. If you need to drink at 10 a.m., I get it. If you need to drink earlier than that, I get it.
So where are you in France?
I am in the southwest. I'm in the southwest corner of France. I am in a village, seaside village called Carcassonne, which is right on the Mediterranean Sea. It's next to, I think, the largest big city, or the next closest big city to us is Narbonne, which is just about 10 to 15 minutes away. So even though I have, living in this small village of 4,000 people, I do have the luxury of a bigger city far away, which I think is the perfect kind of mix. So,
okay. Welcome everybody. We're talking about expat life in France today with Danielle. I want to say it's Baumel, but
you said it perfectly.
It's been a long time since I had French, and I've been studying Spanish, and so that throws off my pronunciation. She is originally from Detroit. You moved to France, I want to say November 2019.
October. Okay. Actually October 2020. And I really was supposed to come over here on a temporary basis. I was supposed to leave in January, and I'm still here. So
okay.
Have no plans on leaving anytime soon. So
I don't blame you on that. If you've got questions about life in France, please drop them in the comments. I can't see who's here, so if you want to say hello in the comments, that's fine too. And if you are catching the replay, drop your questions in the comments and we'll see about getting them answered.
I'd be happy to.
Okay. Now, you said you went over in October of 2020. But yep. When had you initially intended to move to France?
It's always been a long-term goal. And just to give you a little bit of my origin and backstory, my husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, is French and from France. And we met in the States as he was working in the States. But our long-term goal after getting married was at some point to eventually move to France. And so I have a great level of comfort with this country, and particularly this part of France, just because of the many visits I've made to France. I mean, we used to try to average about 2 visits a year. And so for the last 20 years, I've had a lot of expertise, or gained a lot of expertise about different parts of the country, different parts of the region. And so the long-term goal, all that to say, the long-term goal was, yes, to eventually find our way here, you know, upon retirement, or even seeking out careers over here, because I can work from anywhere. He's in hospitality. He could always find a posting in the EU. So it was a goal of ours to be expats. And the goal was to do that together. We're divorcing now, but at the same time, we are still very close and on very good terms. And I'm here in his native country, you know, with our children. And I'm very comfortable. So again, my original goal was to be here just temporarily. But at this point, I've applied for my residency. My children are citizens. I've secured their passports. And so we're just trying to really figure out our path forward here. So whether I keep my American job in the States or look for a position here, since I'll be legally able to work, you know, we're figuring it out. But we all have come to a consensus about our continued stay in France indefinitely.
Okay, and what's the name of the town you're in?
It's called Glisson, so it's spelled Gruissan.
Okay.
So it's on the village. It's on the water. It's on the Mediterranean Sea. So most people are familiar with the southeast side of France, which is going to be your Nice, your Cannes, that whole Riviera, Saint-Tropez. But this is the other side.
Okay. Okay.
Not as far as Biarritz on the southwestern border, but with Spain, but just kind of about 3 or 4 hours away from there. So kind of southwest central.
Okay. Your accent's pretty good. Do you speak French?
I am not fluent, but I am conversational. And if I have to take an exam, as far as the entry level exam I have to take for residency, I could pass that.
Okay.
But I will say it helps to have some knowledge of the language. This part of France, you don't hear a lot of English.
I imagine not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your decision to stay, was that part of like, hey, this just turned out to be really good? Because you said you were supposed to leave in January.
We were. There were a couple things, you know, so the reasons I left the States are some of the same reasons I'm staying here. And, you know, just the way as far as our COVID crisis, the way that began, I think everybody could agree that the response to that was abysmal, especially with what we saw as far as deaths mounting, you know, in the United States, particularly among our communities, you know, Black people, Hispanic communities. And so to just see that, and all of these just kind of disparities and all of these issues with our systems just laid bare. And seriously, like, who would have thought that would have happened in the United States? So, but turns out we, being one of the most developed nations, really were not prepared to handle a pandemic. And now seeing how it was handled in France, and at first, yes, they struggled with that. But I think all nations did, as far as just learning about the but they handled it so much better in the beginning. We're in a lockdown now, and we've been in some form of one since October, in the end of October. 3 weeks after we arrived here, actually, everything starts shutting down. So they have no bars, restaurants, cultural centers, theaters, tours, nothing. We have a curfew. We have to be in the house at 7 p.m. and we have to be in the house until 6 a.m. So, I mean, that was one reason. Seriously, just, I think, coupled with the pandemic, you know, just the George Floyd, just the racism. I mean, and having experienced that, you know, firsthand, even after the George Floyd incident, you know, with my kids in their swim facility, it was just a lot for me. And I come over here, and again, no country is perfect. I just want to put that out there because, you know, France has its own issues. And, you know, the reason I can probably navigate it so easily and without some of the problems that other people have is because I'm American. Regardless of whether I'm a Black American, I'm an American. And so that carries some weight, or that has quite a loud value in France. I mean, I'm not going to be treated as somebody coming from Algeria or somebody from Kenya. So I just want to make that very clear. But I really do feel that even in these 6 months that I've been over here, and I've seen very few Black people, I have been the most comfortable I've been in my skin being Black in a very long time. In a very long time. I don't get looked at. I don't get stared at. I don't have to turn on the news and see Black people getting shot. I don't have to turn on the news and see like the death tolls just mounting in communities of color. I'm not seeing that here. I'm not seeing that here. I'm not being treated that way. I'm not being judged on the color of my skin, not the way that I would be in the States, because I think we all know the American brand of racism is just something that's very unique. And so just watching it in comparison to what was happening in the States at the time, and just our decline as far as our intellectual capacity, particularly under the former administration, and how that just brought everybody out of the woodwork. I don't see that here. I don't see that here. And I consume enough French media and enough news to see that people tend to be better informed. And that was something that really appealed to me. So
I'm just nodding my head because, that I've even more so because I moved abroad in 2016. So I probably joined like the expat Facebook group starting in 2015. And the conversation wasn't as much about race then as it is now. As far as leaving. Right. So, there's this whole Blaxit movement, and people are wondering, like, is such and such country racist? And you hit the nail on the head, I think, that American brand of racism is its own thing. It's like nobody's racist like the U.S. is racist.
No.
And then of course we have American privilege.
Yes, we do. We do.
Funny thing, in my Facebook memories today popped up 3 years ago. I shared an article about the thing that happened at Starbucks where they called the cops on the guy because he was sitting at a table. Yeah, right. And my comment on that post when I shared it was, I didn't leave the U.S. because of racism, but the weight of that was off my shoulders. And,
it is a considerable weight.
I don't blend in my new country, but I don't walk around in fear that I will be killed by the police and that sort of thing. So, I get it.
No, I mean, for me, and I can't say that was, so you're right. It wasn't solely it. It was just the reason I saved so many other things. I mean, I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a breast cancer survivor. And then one of the things the first thing I had to do, I had to make sure that I had some continuation in my oncology care. I'm only a year out of treatment. And so the first thing that I had to do was go to a primary care doctor. So number one, let me just comment on the cost. The cost.
Please do.
Primary care doctor is 25 euros, which is roughly $30. No, we pay that in a copay.
And this was no insurance.
This is no insurance. This is me like walking in with nothing. And so the next thing he asked me was, when was the last time you had blood work? And I was like, not since before my last chemo, which was in December of 2019. And he said, when was your last scan, of, the area where you got your, mastectomy? And I said, I haven't had a scan since my initial diagnosis. And he said, is that normal? Right. And I mean, these are the same things, the same concerns I had with like my after cancer care. Cause it's just like they discharge you from chemo and treatment and they say, okay, hope it doesn't come back, don't drink. And I was like, right, you just like took away all my joy in life. But so that's what they tell you. So over here, the first thing he asked, he's like, when's your last blood work? Did you get a scan? That's the first thing he ordered was the blood work. He said, I can't order the MRI. I have to get you to the oncologist to do that. And so literally 3 weeks later, I had my appointment with my new oncologist down in Montpellier, which is about an hour from me. and it's the home of a cancer institute. So, and one of the best in France. And so they sent me there. And with the oncologist, first thing she asked me, when was your last scan? I was like, I haven't had one since my diagnosis. And they said, well, she said, if you don't do scans at least annually, how do they monitor for any abnormal cell activity? And I was like, these are questions I've had, and I've never had them answered other than my oncologists in the States say, we don't do that.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but
yeah,
there is this thought that the American health system is not about healing us.
It's not about healing. It's not about care.
It's
about insurance.
Yeah.
It's about insurance. It's about making money off of us. And I really felt like, wow. And so she said, yeah, the first thing you're going to do, you're going to get a scan, and then you're going to come back for your next appointment in June. This was in January. And you know how much my oncologist visit cost me?
I'm afraid to even ask.
€50.
Wow.
I was like, what?
Wow.
My oncologist, she's like $40. And then because I'm on a drug, a cancer drug or endocrine therapy for 10 years, tamoxifen, nobody ever told me that. You need to go to the gynecologist, once every 6 months because tamoxifen causes thickening of your uterus. Nobody ever told me that. I read about that. She said, you have to come back every 6 months because we also need to do an ultrasound to make sure that the lining of your uterus isn't thickening. And I was like, well, no one ever told me that. So, and that my oncologist, so I just feel like the healthcare system, as far as that's concerned, even with everybody getting the same basic level of healthcare in the country, the standard of care is so much higher in the United States, and the cost, like I can't even.
There's no comparison on that cost.
There's no comparison. The dentist cost me $40, seriously, to get my teeth cleaned.
I find that people in other countries don't understand our hesitancy to go to get care because often we don't know what it will cost.
We don't.
And they can't understand that. Like, how can you not know? And we're like, right. No, we don't know. And it could be, it's probably going to be a whole lot.
There's no transparency in it at all. We have no idea. We just have to sit and hope that it's the cheapest. And then we just wait. We wait for a bill. That's it.
Yep, and keep our fingers crossed.
And they tell you right up front because it's a national healthcare system. So your visits for most primary care, $25, they don't have the ability to set their own rates or their own fees. So those are all prices that are predetermined and standard. So across an industry. So it's just really interesting the way that they model their system and the way we do ours. It's wow. I mean, and ours is, like I said, all about the insurance. And here, there's one other thing. I'm a victim of my genetics, even though I'm like I thought I was one of the healthiest persons ever. But then they told me that my blood sugar levels were high. They referred me to a diabetic intervention specialist because they said my levels were pre-diabetic. So they referred me to this pre-diabetic intervention specialist to help me monitor what I was eating. And that's all provided at no cost. Because it's all about prevention. Exactly. And
it's about prevention.
She worked with me, and I thought, I had a pretty good diet and it was low carb and low sugar. But, even still, we had to make a few tweaks and modifications. So she sat down over 2 sessions and helped me with that. And then I have to check in again with her in 3 months when I get my blood work done again. So I was like, wow, do you know how many people could benefit from that in the States? Like if we actually did something at the beginning to help them understand what they were doing to prevent their condition from worsening or to prevent it at all. Like there's nothing preventative. There's nothing proactive about, at least in my experience with the American healthcare system.
Okay. Your kids are there. What are they doing for school?
So this is interesting because I registered them for virtual programs for the duration of the school year. We were just going to start with the first semester. But once we decided that we would like to stay here, they decided to go full year for virtual. So they're in American school right now and they're doing that online. But we are in the process of researching our options here so they can go to school. So my kids speak fluent French, but they have never had any formal training in reading or writing French. And so this is where we kind of fall short. We're in a course once a week, but they're still working on grammar. And I'm not sure if they're quite comfortable matriculating into an all French program, if we could find something that is more on an international basis with some level of English and then also maybe 25% French, I think that's what they would feel comfortable with. But speaking and communicating, you can't tell they're not French. And it's so interesting to see that.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome.
I'm very proud of them. They have adapted so well.
Okay, some of the questions that I posted in the group that you were going to come speak. And so several people who weren't sure whether or not they were going to make the live left their questions. If you are here and you have questions, please put them in the comments. Okay, we have a question about the difficulty to obtain residency. This person said that they've watched a lot of YouTube videos about the process, and it seems that it's pretty strict there.
It's very strict. They will turn you away if you don't have everything that they list in your dossier. And seriously, depending on who's working, look, it took me 3 attempts before my passport, my application for my children's passport was successful. And what's crazy is that my kids had birth certificates in France. I didn't have to go through this crazy process. We have something called the livret de famille, where their births, even though they were born abroad or outside of France, their births were in the States with the French embassy in Washington, D.C., because that's where my kids were born. And so they just made it was very complicated. Like I said, if you're missing one little thing, they can be like, oh, no, you got to come back. And with me, as far as my residency is concerned, so I have an advantage because my kids are French. My goal was to secure their passports. And then I was going to apply for a private and family life visa as the mother of French children. So once I got their citizenship and I got their passports issued, that's when I started my process. Because I can stay here as far as my first carte de séjour or residency, I can stay here for a year. And then after I renew that, I renew it for 3 years. And then after the second, after that, you can renew it for 10 years. And then there are other avenues I can go as well, which is, of course, before my husband and our divorce is finalized, I can apply for permanent residence. So I did have an advantage. That doesn't mean that you can't still come over here. I mean, if you may be familiar or you may be looking in the news about how all of the English that are over here, and they're having a hard time because now they have to apply for residency. They're no longer part of the EU, so they are not legally able to live in France as they were before without having proper residency documentation. And so they have to go through that as well. And of course, it does, like I said, you can come over for work. If you go that avenue as an expat and get a job, of course, you can always do that. But then again, coming over here and applying for residency, there are certain requirements, and knowing the language is one of them. So at least some basic level of the language before they'll allow you a residency card.
So you can come, let's say, on a long stay visa.
You can come on a long stay visa. You can stay for up to a year. Yeah, okay. You can stay up to a year on a long stay visa. Mm-hmm.
But if you want
start making your plans,
residency, you need to be working on your French.
You should work a little bit on your French. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. If you're going for citizenship, be prepared for all of French history. Have a very proficient level of French.
Yeah. And the French are very, very particular about their language.
Residency is a lot more lenient than, like I said, applying for the citizenship process, because they want criminal records from everywhere you've ever lived. They want your parents' birth certificates. They want your whole lineage, and before they will do anything as far as examining unless you marry somebody, of course, and then you can apply for citizenship.
So that's always an option, y'all.
That's always an option too. So I had one for 20 years. I'm single now.
Janelle says that she's a little nervous about applying for residency and spending all those years in France to be rejected for permanent residency.
Well, most of the time, and there are rejections, I don't find that those rejections are for the English and the Americans. Unless you've just done something egregious in the prefecture in which you live, or the region department in which you live, in the time that you've been here. So I'm not going to say that you will get it because you're an American, but I will say that there is probably a lot more favoritism shown to Americans in English. that has been my experience, and that has been an experience of many of the Americans that I know over here, especially in these areas outside of Paris, large cities. So.
Okay. And funny you mentioned that, because the next question we had says, outside of Paris, what are some diverse cities that are expat friendly?
Marseille, Toulouse. So just to name a few, if you like brown people, you have a lot. I like them. So closest to me is a city called Béziers, which is about, you could take the highway, the auto route, and it's about 30, 40 minutes. If you take the local roads, it's about an hour. But it was magnificent. And I was just in awe, like seriously, because there were a lot of people that looked like me. And I hadn't really seen a lot of that since I've been here. The first time I did was in Toulouse. I just took a day trip down to Toulouse. And this is the great thing about this area that I live in, is that there's so many places within like an hour, 2 hours of you. You could do it by train and just do it in a day and just come back and just have a full day of exploring. But I went to Toulouse one day and just walked around La Ville Rose, or the Pink City. And I was in awe. And I took the train, and it was like $26 round trip from Narbonne to Toulouse and back. And it was awesome.
I have a former student who actually lives in Toulouse. That's how she got her residency. She was a student at Texas Tech, and I think she did her MBA in France and got a job, met him, and now they've been married and they're 2 kids in. So
trust me, there's a huge expat community here, a huge Black expat community that I didn't even realize existed. So I'm gonna give a shout out to Shar and the Black expat app, because, and I've met somebody since I've been here. She's here in Agde, which is about an hour from me. She's here for cooking school. She's taking a pastry course, and Delights by Dawn. She is posting some wonderful things and learning some really cool stuff. And she's here on her student visa. And typically after one of your visas expires, you automatically convert to a tourist visa, which allows you to stay in an additional 90 days. So just know that. So you do get, a little more time if you want to. But she's here, and I met up with her, and we went to Set probably about 3 weeks ago, before our most recent confinement. And we just had a ball walking the city and sitting outside, because you can grab food to go. You just can't eat in restaurants. And we sat in this park, and it was amazing. So, and it was really cool having met her from the app and having that experience. I mean, it was like I met somebody that I had known my whole life. That's how similar and how much we had in common. So I was really happy for that.
I dropped a link to the expat app in the comments. If you're looking,
it's for expats too. So
if you're looking to connect with other people who are already in a destination that you're considering, or people who are like on the same path you are, that'd be a good place. Tiffany is planning to enroll at language school.
Wow. Yes, you can actually. The French love it when you come here to learn about them. Which
I'm toying with the idea, it'd be great if I took French in high school and in college, and it'd be awesome if I remembered any of it, which I don't. And unless I get flustered in Spanish, that's when a French word will pop up.
Spend 3 weeks here hearing nothing but French. It'll come back to you very. You will be digging into the recesses of your brain and be like, I know this. You will do that.
Because I am toying with that might be a way to
immersion.
To get, because I'd like to get residency somewhere in Europe, and if I have to take the kind of circuitous route by starting as on a student visa, and then
that's how you do it.
That's an option. That's an option.
And like you said, at the end of your student visa, it converts to a tourist visa, which gives you an additional 90 days. There's also some kind of crazy rule in the Schengen Convention where you can stay an additional 90 days after that. It's rarely invoked, rarely used.
Funny you mentioned that. I interviewed someone on my podcast who that's how she got to stay, because in the Schengen zone, Americans, you can only stay for 90 days. And I think it's once every
6 months,
180 days. But apparently there is a special rule in France. It's very,
it's obscure.
Obscure. Nobody knows about it, because she asked about it and was allowed to stay in France. Now that was the thing. She couldn't travel from France to somewhere else in the EU and move on. No, she had to leave from France, but she got an extra 90 days.
You sure can. It's obscure at best and rarely invoked. So,
do you know if you need to get a student visa first?
You have to get your acceptance first, because you have to provide proof of your acceptance in order to even get the visa. That's what you have to indicate or have to put in your visa application, where you've been accepted and proof of your acceptance.
Okay. We have several questions about the cost of living.
Much cheaper. There's some things that are more expensive. Don't come over here with American standards and taste, because if you try to look for stuff that's like American goods, you're going to pay a lot for it. You're going to pay a premium for it. If you are here and you buy French brands and they have very nice things over here, yes, the cost of living is much cheaper. This is a country that really promotes you consuming and buying things that are produced and made in their countries. I mean, that's agriculture that runs the gamut of everything. French have everything, similar to the United States. And they probably produce more of those things in France, because they will proudly display on many of their products made in France. So if you come over here and you are opened to, again, opting for French brands or French things and not trying to find American things, you can find equivalents. You always find French equivalents, except a few, and I'll get to those later.
Because I was going to ask, do they have peanut butter?
They do. They have that. That's not a problem.
Okay. That's really all I care about.
And then food wise, things, it's so cheap. I mean, most villages, even in my village, which is only 4,000 people year round, there's a market day, 3 days a week. So you can buy all your fruits and vegetables. You can buy your meat, your olive oil, your olives, your spices. You can buy all of that at the market. You don't even have to go to a grocery store. It depends on how you eat. If you want things that are more processed, of course you can go to the grocery store. But here, get your meats, your cheeses, everything, your spices, olives, your honey, everything you can find at the market, at the open market. Soap, they have all kinds of things. Right now, you can't sell any non-essential stuff, so the markets are a lot smaller because it's really all food and essentials. But they're still going on. But you can find everything. I mean, I feed I have popcorn kernels. I found the Neo section. Yes, you have popcorn kernels. I pop popcorn. I love popcorn. But the things you can't find, I have not found a good substitute for baking powder. So I did a can of Clabber Girl. The French do everything hard, and it's from scratch. And so they use this, even though it's levure chimique, which is the equivalent, it still takes a long time. I don't have time for that. I just need something instant that I put in a recipe that I know is going to make it rise, period. The one thing that I also cannot find on any consistent basis are black beans. So I had a problem with that. Some stores have them, or one chain has them. They don't have them all the time. My mother-in-law found a bag for me probably about 3 weeks ago, but that was 6 months after I'd been searching for them. So I had a friend send some to me from the States. And then the last thing is, what is it? Brown sugar. I just wanted to bake some chocolate chip cookies and I needed some light brown sugar. They don't have that.
Wow.
I can't find it. And they have lots of sugars, but not that. So yes, but popcorn kernels you can buy.
Okay.
Yes, cost of living is overall lower.
Hair care products.
Okay, so there's a large African community here, and it really depends on where you live. You're not going to see a lot of that near me because it's a lot of white people.
There are 4,000 people there, so no,
4,000 people in the village. You're not going to have that kind of store in that village. However, like I said, the other places that I mentioned that are outside of Paris, like Marseille, Toulouse, and then I think any of the population, and Paris, of course, but any of the other bigger cities where, you have an African population with 4C hair. I mean, you run the gamut. So, but they have a large African population. So you'll find a lot of the hair care stores that have Black hair care products, equivalent or the same as the States.
Okay. What about skincare?
Oh my God, don't get me started. Oh my God, I'm about to go broke buying French Tuff. I am so silly because I bought all this stuff to take with me, like American stuff, to take with me from the States to France. And I'm so dumb because the French stuff, like the stuff that they have in the States that costs so much in the States, like
it's French stuff.
The Caudalie, they got Caudalie stores in the United States. I was like, I would never buy Caudalie in the States. Caudalie is expensive in the States. Caudalie they sell in the pharmacies here, and it is good. They have good, and it's natural. Mostly, they have a lot of more organic, bio, as they call it, those types of lines that are very, very effective. And the thing about French skincare and French supplements, the EU and France in particular does not allow a lot of artificial flavors, colorings, ingredients. They don't allow junk into their market. They're not, again, trying to make their people sick. So they basically, their stuff is so much fresher, so much better, so much more effective than ours. I mean, and not laden with the chemicals. So don't get me started. I'll go broke on the skincare.
That is such
I'm
a
47. I don't think I look 47.
No, you don't look it.
I'm 47 and I've been using French skincare for like the last 3 or 4 months. I mean, and just the food, everything, the walking, the air, everything. I mean, it's really rejuvenating.
No, I assumed you were younger than me, and that's why I assumed that your kids were little.
No, right. So, it's just, I love it. My skin loves it. I mean, I literally feel 10 years younger here.
That's, there's so many times, like on my podcast, I interviewed women who were living in all places, like Madagascar and China, all these places. This might be the first time when somebody said, oh yeah, there's plenty of Black hair care products. Oh, and the skincare stuff is great. That's very refreshing to hear.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, France has a large Black population. I mean, they do. I mean, even outside of Paris. So, I mean, it's not huge, but like I said, they have a very diverse Black population, the same as we do. I mean, and it's not just, people in Africa or sub-Saharan Africa. You have North Africans. So, I mean, you run the gamut of everything. I mean, I know they don't claim it. But they don't claim it. They don't claim it.
Yeah.
Not like we do. Everything that we do as far as diversity runs counter to American values, but whatever, another conversation. So
well, we're gonna talk a little bit about that because I know the French are kind of like the Mexicans, where they would rather not focus on race. It's more of like, we're all French, we're all Mexican.
I mean, that's true and it's not true.
I know that's the official line.
That's the official line. That's true and that's not true. Like I said, so yes, here's my opinion on the matter, but then I'll tell you, what. Well, let me start with the fact. The fact is, yes, they don't keep a lot of statistics on race. They look at everybody as French. That is true. And honestly, that is one of the reasons that I came over, because my kids, I'm Black. My kids, their father is white. My kids are biracial. But when my kids come over here, my kids are French. They don't look at, and honestly, they know me in the village as Le Petit American. Okay. So that not the Black American, they know me as the little American woman. Right. So it's, yes and no, but again, I'm an American. I carry some privilege. And because they know I'm American, that is why I probably get a break. I mean, because I sometimes look ethnically ambiguous. I could be considered Algerian or Moroccan over here, who I don't think they treat as kindly as they should. So, and they certainly carry some stereotypes, because the French are colonizers too. let's be real, the French colonizers too. So I carry some privilege. And so I can't speak to those experiences, but I can say, understanding and knowing some of the community, and from what I see, it is they need to do a lot better. And just as, evidence of that, France has been the subject of some terrorist attacks over the last 6 months. So back in October, around the time we first got here, Muslim extremists killed a 6th grade or middle school teacher for teaching a lesson that they thought was offensive to the Prophet Muhammad and Islam. And he was beheaded in the street. And then there was a shooting, or a nun was killed and somebody was injured. I think a priest injured in Nice, back in November, December. So they've had some pretty catastrophic terrorist events on French soil. I mean, if everybody remembers the Bataclan thing from 2015, Paris as well. So let's just be real there. So I know they say that. I know they say that. That is not always the reality for a lot of the population, or for some of the more diverse populations over here. But again, I'm just going to reiterate that being an American carries some privilege.
I almost feel like it's the least they can do for us.
I agree.
I do feel it's sort of disconcerting to be in a position of privilege when most of my life I was not. I was at a disadvantage. But I should at least get that. I should get something after surviving the United States.
I feel that way. I totally feel that way over here. But like I said, my oppression in the United States, having experienced that, I can't go to a place and see other people oppressed too, So, and that's where you kind of say, ooh, I'm not a citizen yet, but, you're going to recognize and you're going to have an opinion. And, the French also have very strong opinions about it. They call themselves a secular society, but everything here is rooted in Catholic tradition. Everything. Like the church is at the center of the town. Like when you see the signs for Centre-Ville, that means center of the village, there's the church. What's the center of the church? They have religious holidays. For the All Saints, they recognize that in November, and kids get 2 weeks off of school. Not only that, then the Easter holidays, they get 2 weeks off of school. And then, Sundays, everything is closed. Everything. Don't plan to do your shopping trips. You know how we go on the mall on Sundays in the United States? None of that. Everything is closed. If you don't go by 1 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you're shit out of luck for Sunday dinner. If you didn't shop already. So restaurants are open, but everything else as far as commerce, closed. So, you bill yourself, as I was saying, as a secular society, yet you are the least tolerant of someone who is a different religion, or at least people who are adherents. It's the same side of the coin for me. There's no rationalization, justification for it. So you want your right to be secular, they need their right to practice their religion, and without being persecuted and told that they can't dress in accordance with their religion. So those are some of the things that I take issue with. So this country is not perfect.
And that's something for those that are considering a move abroad.
I want to be very clear. I want to be very real. Yep. I want to be very real.
No country is perfect. It's about finding a place where the benefits outweigh those things.
Oh, the benefits outweigh you getting killed by the police in America.
That too. We had another question about your choice of location, why you are in a smaller village versus a larger place.
A few reasons. So I will just say, in life, I am blessed beyond measure in belief. And sometimes the universe guides you or imbues you with wisdom that you don't even really know you have. But I think I just made some really good choices, in my life, my past relationship with my ex-husband, especially because of his ties to this country and to not this area, but an area not too far from here. So again, I married to him for 20 years. His parents live here. He's from here. I met him in DC, but he's from France. And so I've been coming over here pretty frequently for the last 20 years. And over the last, I think we've had this place 7 or 8 years. But his parents asked us about, finding, us all going in together on a rental property or a vacation property, somewhere near the beach. And I was like, yeah, that sounds really cool. Let's do that. Literally, the four of us went in together on this apartment in this village. And this is a very authentic French. This is a vacation resort, like a resort town, really. So again, there's 4,000 people here annually, but in the summertime, it's 40,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Weekly, because bars, restaurants, all the beaches, there are beaches here. So people come here. So we wanted something like in a vacation spot, that we could all use during the summer. And then, also if family wanted to use it, they could rent it out from us for the week. And so I think we bought this, maybe 7, 8, maybe 9 years ago. And so we've had this place for a while. And don't get me wrong. Now this is quite a drastic reduction in space from my home in the States. So me and my kids are literally in about 700 square feet. This is you're only supposed to be here during the day. This is in the summertime. This is the beach. You come here for a week or 2 weeks and spend time here. It was never my intention to live here on a long-term basis. But yeah, so we've had this place. And I was fortunate enough, and I love this place. I mean, seriously, I have figured out that water is my happy place, and I can walk to 3 beaches.
There you go.
Which is, and see the sunrise. And this department in particular, again, there are a lot of resort towns here in the neighboring department, but it's known for 300 days of sun. And the temperatures are pretty mild in the winter. It was, between 50 and 60 degrees. I'm from Michigan. I live in Detroit, Michigan. It's cold, and I couldn't do it. Coupled with the pandemic, there were just some lines that I drew in the sand, and winter was one of them. Like I couldn't do it. And so, that was part of my motivation too, just hoping to find better and more temperate climes for the winter and not being so miserable. So, but that was part of it. That went into it as far as coming here. But I was fortunate enough to be able to, buy this, with my husband and his parents, somewhere between 7 and 9 years ago. So we've had it, and it works, like I said, and it just started off as a vacation place, and we have made it work into a work from home, school from home living place. And it helps a lot that my grandparents love to have my children on the weekends. And so I get my time to myself. I've been a solo parent for 6 months to 2 teenagers. And yeah.
I can imagine.
It's for the brave.
Do you have any tips for people who are maybe interested in sort of village, small town life?
Research and take many visits. I mean, I seriously, you want to spend time here because my village doesn't have a traffic light. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I counted, not a single traffic light, not an elevator, none of that. And that's very typical for a French village. I mean, even some of the larger ones. So there are no clothes dryers here. My clothes dryer is a clothesline. That's not even a thing for them. Some people have dryers, some people don't. I just just don't come here with American expectations. I think I've said that before as far as purchasing options. Don't come here with American expectations. Don't expect to have curbside pickup for your trash. You have to walk your trash to the community bin or bins. The same with your recycling. So, just if you have an open mind, you could really like it. And I have found that the things that I thought I needed, I don't really need those things. So I came here with one suitcase for me, one suitcase for each of the kids, and my cat. So there are all these things I thought I needed in the States that I no longer need. But I would say you have got to be here. You have to understand what the weather patterns are like. Can you get out of the village? What's the nearest big city? What if you need medical care? So yeah, there are a lot of these rural communities that are absolutely beautiful, but just know your surroundings and just do your research. You have to come here and visit. You have to understand what the locals are like, where you're going to get your bread or your pain au chocolat from in the morning, because that's important. I've been eating them like every day since I've been here until they told me my blood sugar was high, so I stopped. But yes, walkable where your grocery stores are, because some of these places are pretty far out, pretty spread out and on rural roads. So yeah, if you have bad weather and you're up in Grenoble or somewhere near the Alps and you live in one of these villages, you have a really bad snowstorm, you might not be getting out for like a week. And that's normal.
The town that you live in,
mm-hmm.
do like when you went to Toulouse or when you went to another place, can you get
mm-hmm.
there from your town, or do you need to arrange transport?
That's another thing. You need to get to the train station. So in neighboring Narbonne, there's Uber Eats, there's the train station, but Narbonne is 15 minutes away. So with Carcassonne, there is a bus that takes you to Narbonne, because all of the kids that live here, they actually have to go to school in Narbonne. So they take a bus. So there is a bus, and you can take the bus to Narbonne, and it really isn't a very long trip. It's maybe like 20 minutes or 25 minutes as opposed to the 15 minutes it takes me to get to the center of the village. But there is public transportation. But again, just make sure if that's okay with you, that's fine. I mean, there's plenty of parking and private parking. I have a car here. So, and I was leasing a car first. That was cost prohibitive after, 2-3 months. And so again, I had the fortune of having family here who, one is a cousin in the car business, and he was able to find me a very low priced, cheap French car, but one that won't break down. And so I have a car to get around. And insurance is another thing. If that's an option for you and you can buy a car here, because almost anybody can buy a car here. And they'll even let you drive it on your American license for up to a year with the insurance. But if you plan to do that, like the insurance process is kind of complicated. You will have to get a driving record and be prepared to do that. But other than that, they'll let you drive for about a year on your American license before they require you to get a French license. So be planning, because I hear like the French driver's license process, and I'm just about to start. It takes a really long time.
As do most things in France.
Patience.
Right?
Yeah, bureaucracy is one thing they do really, really well. It's like an art form here. It's an art form. So, like, oh.
Have you driven many places out of your town, like road trips?
Oh yeah. Oh man, look. Everything that's within 2 or 3 hours of here, I'm exploring it. And I've taken the opportunity to do that. I can't do that now because, it's been about 2 weeks. We can't leave our departments or go outside of 10 kilometers of our home because of the new restriction rules. We can't go across departments. But I did. I didn't. But before that, I was exploring everything. I was exploring everything within we have been under curfew, but there's a lot you can do between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. So me and my daughter one day went to Lourdes, which is about 3 hours and 15 minutes from here. So Lourdes is the site of miracles.
I went to Catholic school and I was like, that sounds familiar. Okay.
Yeah, it's the second most visited pilgrimage site after the Vatican in the world. It attracts like 6 million visitors because the Virgin Mary appeared to Bernadette Soubirous in 1858 or something like that. And she appeared to her 18 times. And the Catholic Church confirmed this as like a miracle. Of course, after Bernadette was persecuted and, it was kind of messed up, because they totally doubted her, this young peasant girl. The story is really kind of fucked up. But but anyway, the Virgin demanded or asked that she identify herself in the last apparition of Bernadette, and it said that they should build a cathedral or a basilica on top of the grotto. So you can go there now, and it's like the holiest of holy sites in France. And like I said, the second holiest in the world, where they have the healing water. And they have pools like in the summertime. COVID has made it seem a lot of restrictions, but they had the underground pools or the baths where they take the physically infirm and they get to bathe in the healing waters. And the Catholic Church, I mean, I think they said they've claimed literally, I don't know, thousands of miracles from this site, but the Catholic Church has only confirmed 70. But that was amazing. That was an amazing day. I'm not a super religious person, but it was just so sacred and it was so special to be there and see everybody making that pilgrimage, even in COVID. And that was just fucking amazing. And the other places that I've seen, I've gone to Carcassonne, which is I love UNESCO World Heritage Sites. I am a UNESCO nerd. So everywhere I go, everywhere I vacation, I try to go to a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So there's so many around here. So the closest one to me is in Carcassonne, which is this medieval city, which is so cool. So if you understand anything about this region, it's rich with histories, but particularly religious history with the Cathar movement, who was considered heretical by the Catholic Church, and they basically obliterated them as the Catholic Church did everything that stood against them. But this area is so rich with that. The Episcopal city of Albi is within 2.5 hours of here. Like I said, Carcassonne is the closest at 50 minutes from here. Then the Pont du Gard, which is the oldest Roman bridge in France, is maybe about 2.5 hours from here. So there's so much to see, culturally for me in this particular area. And that's part of why I chose it.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
If you're a history nerd and like just real history, just exploring it has a lot of history. Paris is great, don't get me wrong, but there's so much down here. I could be here 10 years and not see it all.
That's awesome. If y'all got any questions, put them in the comments. We did have another question about the COVID situation and the tourist experience. Are tourists allowed into France?
No. You
have foreign tourists been allowed?
There are 7 nations that are allowed to visit France right now without a motif impérial, or a really good reason, big reason. And of course, Australia and New Zealand are on that list. I think Cyprus too. Yeah, I know Australia and New Zealand for sure, but they're the only, and Israel, they're the only 7 countries that are allowed to visit the EU right now as tourists and without a reason. It is still closed right now to most nations, including the United States. And so there's no getting over here as a tourist. So you have to have a motif impérial. And right now, throughout all of France, like I said, there is a restriction on travel that is more than 10 kilometers outside of your home. So nobody is even traveling domestically at this moment.
Since you've been there, other than the first 3 weeks when you got there, has there been any lifting of the COVID restrictions?
Yeah. Okay. So the first ones went into effect roughly October 30th. And those were pretty strict because they lasted until December 15th, but you had to have what you call an attestation every time you had to leave your home. You could only stay outside for an hour a day for recreational purposes. And that was only within 1 kilometer of your house. Like, that's just basically walking a circle around your house. I was like, what? I was like, I'm going to die. Seriously. But then they lifted those. They allowed you, I think, as of November 28th to go outside for 3 hours with an attestation. And then you could go within 6 kilometers of your house. And so they allowed you to be outside a little bit longer. But we still had a curfew that was 6 p.m. And then as of December 15th, or they also opened retail because they shut down everything, even the non-essential aisles in, like the big box stores like Carrefour, they shut down everything. And so then as of November 28th, they did allow some retail to open as well. December 15th, we went to a curfew system. It was 8 p.m. So, you had to be home in the house, couldn't be out on the road or doing anything without a motif impérial or an attestation from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. So there have been some that were lifted. And so there were others that were lifted. But then we went back to a nationwide curfew, I think, back in February, to to 7 p.m. and then they rolled it back to 6 p.m. because they were doing regional restrictions for some of the areas that began to see some spikes and some surges in cases. And of course, that was in the Paris area and also in the Southeast in the Riviera, and then also some of the areas that border some of the neighboring countries like Germany and Belgium and Italy. And so they've lifted some, but as of April 5th, we have gone back into restriction. And this time they closed schools, which lets you know that it's serious because the cases of COVID that are running rampant over here are more of the UK variant, given the proximity to the UK. And so variants, the variant anglaise, those are most of the cases. They account for 80%, 79, 80% of the cases of COVID right now in France. And so it was necessary given what the UK had itself done, and also shutting down schools, because they had not really shut down schools all year, and France hadn't shut down schools all year until now.
Oh, wow. It's interesting that you even know.
Right now. Yeah.
It's interesting that you even know that X amount of cases are from the English variant, because in Mexico,
you don't know.
We don't know anything. We really don't know anything. So that's interesting.
They have a COVID tracker. They have a couple of different devices. They have one that's put out by the French government, and then they have another guy who's gathered independent data, from the French agencies and just compiled it all together, for users' consumption. And lots of charts, lots of graphs. So it's really cool. Like the COVID tracker site by GZ Rogier. You follow a little bit, if you can read a little bit of French, you can get it, you understand what it is. But it's been very interesting to see the sources of information that are put out. But yeah, they definitely break it down by the types of variants. So you know what accounts for the cases in your region, in your department, and if there are the variants, or if they are just, COVID that originated and hasn't been the mutated brand or form. So, but they pretty detailed. And of course, you can also monitor what ICU capacity is. Right now for France overall, it's about 117%. And in my region in particular, it's a bit lower than that, but it's approaching 100. I think it's probably gone down just slightly over the last couple of days as they're seeing some improvement from the regional restrictions. But in my region, it's about 80%. So there are concerns here. There are concerns. It's better overall. The infection rate is lower than the overall rate in France in my department, and probably because we spend a lot of time outside. We do a lot of things outside down here. But yeah, it's still high. It's still high in other regions, and some of the regions are experiencing, spikes and surges. So.
Now, at what point will you, or are you already on the national healthcare system?
Okay, so you don't get the carte vitale unless you are a citizen. You are before, you don't get it unless you are a citizen. So if you are a resident, you are eligible for CPAN, which means it's like a social assistance or social security, and you do have to pay taxes, as a resident, especially if you hold a job over here. So you're eligible for, or you get insurance through your employer. So if you're employed by a French employer and you're getting health insurance through them. So that's when you get into the national healthcare system. Otherwise, like I said, it's CPAM, which means you're paying out of pocket, but you're getting 70% of that reimbursed. And so, for instance, if all the money that I have paid towards my medical care over here, which has not been a
few $100s.
Right, exactly. Not been a lot. And I've had a lot of appointments. I get 70% of that back for me and my children right now. Okay. So I took my son to a podiatrist because she has to do his orthotics, and we get them over here because it's so much cheaper over here than in the States. Even when we were in the States, we would get it done over here because I pay her $35 for her fee, 35 euro for her fee. And in the States, his orthotics cost me like $400. And here they cost me 140 euro. I'm like, what is going on here? I was like, I've been doing this wrong all my life. all my adult life. I'm like, wow, this is nuts.
Now you are working the same job that you had before moving.
Yes, I am.
Now, how was your employer cool with this, or?
Yeah, they blessed my being in France because all our offices were closed. You had to basically donate a leg to travel for business. So, because I mean, as far as all of the waivers you had to sign, the company was not trying to be responsible for you getting sick on a business trip. So, with everything shut down, my boss said, "I don't care where you work from."
I can't be mad at that.
I'm not going back into client sites probably into next year. So it's all for me. But yeah, I mean, this pandemic proved one thing. All the things employers said that they couldn't do, they did it this time. They were able to do it this time. Oh no, we can't let people work from home. Oh no, they have to be in an office. They'll never get anything done.
That one right there, I think, is the biggest misbelief that, like, oh, them coming to the office, that's what's making them productive.
That's what for this, because someone's watching them. Like, nobody's capable of working independently. Some of us have done it for 13 years. Do it swimmingly.
Now, at the beginning, you mentioned, possibly exploring the idea of getting a job there in France. Of course, you would have to have residency in order to do that.
Correct.
And
documented right now, which is it's very interesting to be on this side of the issue. I mean, I don't fear, being dragged out of my home and thrown on a plane to be repatriated back to my country or anything. As a matter of fact, they told me it's not your fault because it's an administrative delay because I couldn't get an appointment until April, end of the month. So, yeah, it was very interesting to be on the side of that issue. But yes, I mean, I know my application is in process, and for that reason, I am not, violating any laws that allow me to, because I don't advise that. I don't advise that. If you have expat dreams and you're found to be in violation of immigrant law, then your dreams are killed. I mean, so do it legally.
I think you have to work hard to get deported during a global pandemic. I really think
you do. You do over here, especially, definitely. But just don't. When this is all over, especially if you are planning or mapping something out for the future, just make sure all your legal ducks are in a row.
Now, I'm assuming do you know anything about the tax situation if you will become a tax resident solely when you get residency, or like if you continue to work the job you have?
Oh no, you get taxed for that over here too, because you are working physically in France. So yes, there are some tax implications. If you have an accountant, please speak to that person before you do something like that. Ideal, as I said, is getting a job with a company in France or with an office in France and being hired through that office. And then they can also sponsor you in some situations. So, do that if that is a route that is available to you. But otherwise, you plan to keep your job in the States and just be working physically in France. Just be mindful of the fact that there are some tax implications and you're required to pay some taxes.
That's good to know.
For working in France.
And no, I mentioned this in one of my YouTube videos, is that every country is different. Mexico is like, are you sourcing the income in Mexico? So like if you've got an Airbnb, that sort of thing, they're going to tax you. But if you're working online, they're like, that money doesn't originate in Mexico. Not our business. Now, if you become a citizen, that's different. But if you're just doing it on a residency visa, they're not pressed about it.
Oh wow!
So every country is different. So y'all definitely need to research
if you're over here not as a tourist and longer for your 90 days and technically physically working, so the business, your clients are in the US, you are still working in France.
Good to know.
All right.
We are going to, I've had you here for a little bit over an hour. We're going to make this last call. If anybody's got a question about life in France, moving to France, this is the time to ask. While we have Danielle here, let's see if I have any other questions that somebody asked before. What's your Wi-Fi like in your small little village with no traffic?
Awesome. I mean, I'm here. I work from home in my apartment. My kids are on their 2 devices for virtual school. I have all 3 of the phones are hooked up to it. We have absolutely no issue with that.
That's great.
And that is not true for every village. I just want to point that out.
Okay.
Like I said, a lot of tourists come down here, so just know that they accommodate, travelers and tourists. That is not the case for every small village that you may want to live in.
So it's definitely something you need to look into.
One of those things I said, do your research or check it out multiple times before you decide to make a move.
Okay, so we had a question. Earlier you had commented about the Black expat community in France. Have you found a community near you?
The nearest me is in Marseille, and there are quite a few people. Marseille, outside of Paris, is one of the larger cities. It's in the southeast. And again, a very diverse community down there. So outside of Paris, there's quite a few Black American expats. Going south into Marseille is where you find the next largest group of Black American expats. So Marseille is about 3 hours from me. That's the closest.
Okay. And has that had any impact on your transition to living in France?
I have not been able. I really started to get my legs under me, and especially when I figured out, I'm not going to say when I finally figured that out, I really start reaching out and really trying to research and find out about more of a community. And so that's when I joined the Black Expat app, I think back in January, February. And I really start kind of reaching out to some of the expat communities here and talking to more people. So I haven't had a chance to yet connect with those people. But again, through the Black Expat app, I was able to find Dawn Delisle, who is a gastronomicon cooking school in Agde and here on her student visa, and she's met up with a couple weeks ago, and we hung out for the day and set, and it was so good to speak English and just have another Black American with me exploring a city. And it was just so cool to watch her see some of these things for the first time. And I was just like, it's so awesome seeing this and your reaction to these things, because it's her first time down in the south of France. So it was so fun to do that.
Okay, we had another question. What would be considered a reasonable amount to have saved if you're thinking about moving to France?
That depends on where you want to be. So you want to be down here in the South. I'm going to speak to the South, because the South is the department I live in, I think is the second cheapest. The second.
And what department is that?
This is Aude. This is Department 11 in the Occitanie region. So Aude, I believe, is the second least expensive department to live as far as cost of living is concerned. You can find fabulous houses. I mean, depending on what size your family is, you can find very reasonably priced, 2 to 3 apartments. And if it's just a single person, that's what I would recommend. It's a lot of apartment living and condo living, especially in these seaside communities. It's great. If you go a little bit farther out, you can find more land and more property. But again, that's when I start to do a lot of your research about some of these smaller villages that are further away from a city center. Because again, if you're working from home, you need to make sure, as we just talked about, Wi-Fi is good and not, or even, it exists in some places in France. So just to make sure. But yeah, down here, I find it relatively low. You can find it very, if you're renting, it's inexpensive. Like I said, food is inexpensive. I think the Paris experience for a lot of people will prove to be expensive and probably as expensive as some places in the States. But down here, it's a whole different ballgame. And I can speak to that.
If I was to come to that area that you're in, and I wanted like a 2-bedroom apartment, what would I be looking at?
Probably about €.
How much?
It may be between. It could be a lot cheaper than that. Actually, it could be between €400 and €600. So that's roughly $525 and about $760.
Cheaper than the U.S.
Yeah. And again, you don't have all of the amenities. You might even be able to find a house for that amount as well, like a 3-bedroom house. But again, get used to the fact that many of these houses only have a bathroom. One.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that's a problem for you, do a lot of research. Because a lot of the one bathroom, and you have a salle de bain and you have the toilets. And the toilet is just the toilet, and then there's the salle de bain. There's not a master bedroom. Just be prepared for that. And sometimes there's only one. So if it's a family of 4, that might be hard. Gotcha. Especially given what you're used to. Like I said, we downsized significantly, and we have one bathroom for the 3 of us. My kids went from having like their own bathroom.
Let me give you a call back.
Oh, this has been an interesting experience with two teenagers.
Is there anything that you wish you had brought with you?
The only thing I miss really is Chipotle. That's it. I can't find good Mexican food. I don't really miss anything else. I really don't. In the 6 months, I'm coming up on like 7 months here. There might be some things I start to miss. I thought about that a little more recently, but as I've had to reflect on, like, what from home do you need? What from home do you need? I brought my kids and my cat.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much, Danielle, for staying up late to talk to us.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to make it.
Okay, we really appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your Friday night and your weekend. And thank you again.
You're so welcome, Natalia. And if anyone has additional questions, don't hesitate. Don't share what I know.
Would you, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how would you prefer that they do that?
Oh, email. Email is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll post your email address if somebody asks for it. Okay.
Sure. Absolutely. Be happy to help. And just to plug myself, I'm maybe going to start a business down here with, tours and wine and culture, history. So yeah, that's something that's
plug away.
Our Black travel dollars matter. So, someone's looking for a custom or curated tour down here, and quite affordably, I'm that person. So,
okay. All right.
when they start letting vaccinated Americans over, when they let Americans over, period. So.
Okay. One last question squeaked in here. When looking for housing, are there some phrasing to look out for, like unfurnished versus semi-furnished? Our kitchen's included, because in Mexico, a kitchen is not necessarily a default thing.
Okay, here's the thing, especially in some of the older homes. Like, I have a fairly modern kitchen in my condo. Ooh, but that's one thing you got to watch out for. The kitchens are included, but kitchens here, sometimes the kitchen is like two eyes and like a hot plate because there's no oven.
I mean, I don't even cook, but still, that's bad.
Kitchen, when they put kitchen on a listing, you have to ask questions about the kitchen. Like I said, you can count on, in most cases, unless it's a new construction somewhere, you can count on it to be like one bathroom, one side of the bed, and one toilet. That's a given. But kitchen, you got to ask about. So that would be the one thing that I would say be aware of in listings. And of course, if you're looking for square feet, they do things in meters squared here. And I can't remember the exact conversion, but be careful with that as well. Make sure, if you have a requirement for square footage, that, you do your calculation to figure out what that is. I mean, because some of the places, especially those that are more affordable, can be a little bit smaller. Like their standards are a little bit different from American as far as construction. So, they have a whole section at IKEA for smaller spaces, and they did that for Europe first. So, population density. So just, be aware of that, and what your requirements are. And I would say, if you don't have a command of the language, there are a lot of services down here. They are the best resources to help you with real estate. And some of them are very affordable, but if you have certain requirements and you really need somebody to do that digging for you, they know this region, they can do that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that we are going to bring this to a close. Thanks everybody who came live. And again, thank you, Danielle.
You're very welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that interview I did with Danielle. If you are planning to move abroad, remember, I've done several videos about Black women living in different countries around the world. Some of those are linked below in the description. Be sure to check those out. And if you need personal help figuring out how to make your move possible, remember, I do one-on-one consultations. You can book time with me at bit.ly/askadalia.